Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Today's guided meditation continues on from the earlier session we conducted with the focus on having a dirty Dhamma practice. In this guided meditation we were looking at where we still can't see as we're practicing Dhamma, trying to manifest the Buddha's teachings, where we still go wrong. Whether it's with our kalyanamittas, spiritual friends, our Dhamma teachers, fellow retreatants, in our Dhamma circles and Dhamma groups, and all the good things associated with Dhamma practice. So we remind ourselves why we are doing this meditation. We're not trying to become super clean, good people, although that may be part of the end result, but it's not the main reason. The main reason is because in order to progress on this path, to develop and manifest fully the teachings of the Buddha, to clear the mind of things which are obstructing us from fully knowing and realizing what the Buddha means, what he actually taught. We have to abandon or rid ourselves of these smelly, filthy, nasty defilements. From the earlier meditation, we saw some of the areas where it creeps in, where we may not have looked before or persisted in trying to clean up. All of us have a way of sweeping things under the carpet, allowing things to fester, not owning up. So this meditation and the other one with the Dhamma focus is really our opportunity together to clean it up, to look where it's hard to look, and to give all of ourselves a chance of being better Dhamma practitioners who join into Dhamma circles, Dhamma groups, maybe leading Dhamma sessions, teaching, wanting to teach. If we don't follow what the Buddha says, it's very hard for us to grow, to progress. And we are not suvacha. We're not easy to instruct. We're not easy to give feedback to. And we stagnate, veer off the path, or we don't grow. So have this in mind as we go through the other parts of the Vatthupama Sutta, the other upakilesas, defilements, mental stains. Have that in mind. If there are examples that are painful, or they strike a chord, really look at it. Really focus the attention of the meditation there, within this guided meditation and outside this meditation. Think of it as a blessing to start to see what one can't or refuses to see. Think of it as removing the obstacles, removing the blocks. And if you take it in this way, the path starts to really unfold. There'll be gladness in the mind. The mind will experience great pleasure. The body will relax and become tranquil. And there'll be a deeper happiness. It's not nibbana, but it's something that helps you to concentrate the mind. And from that place you can discern and realize truth from Buddha's teachings. So get comfortable, relax the mind, and let's begin. Let's examine stubbornness or thambho. It's a form of mental rigidity, mental inflexibility, and usually it's where we're holding on to views and opinions that we're unwilling to give up. We won't bend or open up to other perspectives. Maybe we won't even listen. And the inflexibility comes from our consciousness, where we could be holding that our view of reality, our view of Dhamma is the correct one. And we might be holding on to these things through other defilements such as anger, conceit, arrogance, and not really know it. Usually when we think we're right, we don't think of all the other mental defilements to check and see. But our behavior can normally show these things. Our verbal behavior, our physical behavior. And stubbornness, this thambho, is usually present in all arguments, particularly all arguments between people. And so in Dhamma you see this a lot, when people are arguing over Dhamma, arguing over good deeds, arguing over the setup of and planning for good deeds. You see this across the board with fellow students, fellow teachers, in Dhamma, and across our communities, our Dhamma circles, our Dhamma groups. Usually how we see it is when we see that people have made up their minds and they won't budge, or we have made up our own minds and we won't budge. We're adamant. And so how it manifests in real life is we won't listen, we won't open up, we won't heed other views and opinions or perspectives. And it's very strongly linked to Dhammamacharya, this stinginess about knowledge and Dhamma, where we have labelled and separated out what we think is in this box and that box. We're always measuring and labelling when you look at these mental stains. That's inherently how we construct. We'll put everything in Theravada in this box, we'll put everything in Mahayana in that box. We'll put mental defilements and what we think of them into this box, and then we'll put all the wholesome activities in another box. We'll put these teachers into this box. The ones we like, we'll put that into another. We'll put views about karma into this box, and then views about eternalism into another box. We'll put all these different shades of awareness, mindfulness, consciousness into various little boxes. We're always splitting things, labeling them, measuring them, analyzing them. And so when it comes to stubbornness, we've already done all that, and now we're holding fast. We're prepared to argue and through any means not budge. And if you look at the vijnanahara, consciousness as nutriment, what you find is that the perversion is nicca, lastingness, permanency. And where it leads to, particularly when it comes to the moha agati, the going the bad way by delusion, is once you are imbued with the perversion of lastingness, that your views are fixed, they're worth being held on to. They're even higher than nibbana because this construction has more weight. It's what we're holding on to. Because we don't know what nibbana is, and so we're holding on to something else, a construction, a concept, a view. And then self-theory clinging, attavadu upadanam, comes in. It's linked to our constructed self and the perversion of that we can control all these things, that it's worth taking as me and mine, these particular views and opinions that are not nibbana. And then it goes to idam sacha vinivesa. The idea that you have the right view, that your view is the superior one. And if you keep going on that vein, you end up in moha agati, going the bad way through delusion. Now when you look at the Anumana Sutta, you find that when you're not easy to instruct, not easy to give instruction, not easy to admonish, not easy to speak to, or not easy to give feedback to, it becomes a real hindrance, a real obstacle on the path. It doesn't matter what role you have, whether you're a teacher, a student, whatever label or role, it's all the same because it's a barrier to improvement, to progress on the path. When one has this particular mental stain of stubbornness, people become very unwilling to give feedback because they see the stubbornness in one's ways, that because of these views and opinions, these very strong views and opinions, one will always argue back, get angry over the argument, get angry over the topic, get angry over the instruction or feedback. And it can lead to verbal sparring and maybe even physical fighting. You may not think that it can lead to a physical fight in a monastery or in a Dhamma setting, but it can. The question to ask oneself is, how closed up am I when it comes to views and opinions around Dhamma? Am I open or am I closed? Am I movable, flexible, willing to listen? And am I willing to give up my view, my argument. The problem with this quality is that it can be quite harsh when it manifests in the mind. It can already be quite harsh. One could be creating arguments in one's mind without a person actually physically being there. It's almost like one can fight in one's mind. And then it leads to actually fighting in person, arguing in person, getting upset in person. How many times have we heard, I'm right and you're wrong. I can't accept your view is wrong. Or my teacher is better than your teacher and I refuse to accept your view. You haven't explained it correctly. The way I've explained it is more correct. It's more penetrative. It makes more sense. And you see it all the time between Dhamma groups, within Dhamma groups, within lineages, between lineages, over suttas. What people think the Buddha really said, what the Buddha didn't say, but is attributed. Around the history of Buddhism, around the history of even Buddha, about what happened when he was Prince Siddhartha, around many, many different things associated with Dhamma. And then when it comes to doing good things, organizing talks, organizing Dhamma retreats and programs, you also find a lot of stubbornness, where people disagree when planning, disagree when implementing, disagree when conducting. And it's a very poor showing when it manifests in front of all these people that come to learn, come to practice, come to harmonize together. It's almost like seeing family squabbles in a Dhamma environment. When we observe this in our communities, it's very unpalatable. It turns us off. We find it very disagreeable because it scratches the mind. It hurts the mind. It doesn't want to hold all this akusala, to see it even if one is not doing it. So if we are cultivating, breeding this type of unwholesome quality, it's really good to actually acknowledge it. The thing is, we also have this towards Buddha and Dhamma. We can be quite stubborn in the face of Buddha explaining certain teachings and going into detail, and we refuse to accept it. We're unwilling to open to Buddha's words. That is probably one of the most ultimate stubbornnesses in Dhamma. That even when we read the early texts and they repeat themselves through the Sutta Pitaka, we refuse to accept it. We refuse to practice it. We refuse to demonstrate a willingness to realize it. At that level, this becomes one of the biggest akusalas and a huge barrier to development of the Noble Eightfold Path. And it's not just about views and opinions, it could also be really silly things. Or not silly things, but little things. Like when we're on retreat, or at a Dhamma talk, or an event, or just gathering with our Dhamma community, and we're told to do something, and we don't want to do it. That there is an immediately some kind of hackle, some kind of defensive mechanism that says, I'll just go and do the opposite, or I'll ignore what's being said. So stubbornness can be created, developed in small ways as well. So you can see the whole thing. It can start very small, or it can go all the way up to Buddha and Buddha's teachings. So there's much to look at there. And when you have this quality and it manifests through verbal and physical action, you can see how unpalatable it is, that people would find you very disagreeable, if not obstructive, would want to avoid you, would not trust you, because depending on what your behavior is that comes from stubbornness, you become more untrustworthy, more unlikable if you act on that stubbornness in an unwholesome way. On the Sappurisa path, there is much respect given to those that don't cultivate stubbornness, that instead they cultivate non-stubbornness. They're genuinely willing to listen. They don't have a propensity to argue. They're quite flexible when it comes to taking other people's perspectives. It doesn't mean that they agree, but it means that they take them on, willing to listen, willing to contemplate, willing to go away and look at it. It may mean they come back and they don't agree, but they don't show signs of stubbornness, and they don't get angry when someone speaks of things that maybe are not in line with what you practice. But the defilement is not there. And then on top of that, they don't demonstrate some kind of conceit to say, I'm not willing to listen to you out of conceit. And that doesn't matter whether they're a teacher or a monastic or whatever the role is that maybe is in a higher position, but there's no conceit there in order to argue, in order to be inflexible. They're willing to bend, and if one is wrong, really willing to accept a different view and not to argue about it. When you contemplate a person like that, you can already experience a mind that is lighter, that doesn't push, doesn't want to collide. It's not a mind that is harsh and leaping to fight. It's softer, malleable. So if we see the error in breeding stubbornness, this mental rigidity, the mind can be extremely light and free. The absence of stubbornness brings happiness, gladness to the mind that it's no longer plotting, creating arguments in one's mind in order to be ready for the actual verbal argument. A mind that is free of stubbornness is one that can concentrate more easily. You can concentrate easily because it's less cluttered. Less cluttered with all those views and opinions. Holding on to massive theses of concepts, constructions. It's all gone. In the absence of mental rigidity, stubbornness, the mind gets to experience a taste of Nibbana. It leans closer to Nibbana. It's leaning in the direction of Nibbana, not thinking about it, not constructing it. We can make a strong determination from this place not to cultivate stubbornness, not to be so mentally rigid, not to be so harsh. And with this strong determination, we can allow our paths to progress, to grow, to manifest in the right direction, the kusala, wholesome, skillful aspects. Although we haven't covered all the mental stains in this meditation, I think I'd like to end this guided meditation here, and we can pick up the guided meditation for the remainder of the mental stains at another opportunity. So let's share the merit of today's session with all sentient beings. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and well. Blessings of the Triple Gem to all of you. Wish you all well. Theruwan saranai.